Hi, everyone. Hope you all are doing great. Very excited to have Dori here with us, and we're going to jump into such an important topic, which is active listening skills.
Mhm.
So relevant in your personal life, your professional life, and a skill that is not very well developed in most people. So, Dori, welcome and thank you for joining.
I'm happy to be here and excited to finish this three-part series. Part one was around how to let go of negative thoughts, negative stories, negative assumptions that get in the way of communication. And then the second part, we talked about feedback, giving feedback well so you can create trust instead of creating turnover on your team, in your group. And today we'll talk about active listening skills.
Awesome. Well, let's dive in, Dory, and
All
I'm sure
right.
there's a lot to cover here. So,
Sure. I'm going to share my screen. Well, let me get the
absolutely.
share and then I'll start the slideshow. All right. So first we'll start off with defining communication. What is the definition of communicate? And there's many definitions out there. This is the one that I think fits well with how I think of communicating. Exchanging thoughts, feelings, and information by writing or speaking or some type of expression. And the key word there is exchange. So it's the transmission of information from one person to another. So there's one person that's the source of information, and then the thoughts or feelings are transmitted. The information is expressed and received, and the information goes from one person to another. And so think of clapping. So clapping takes two hands, right? What if you only used one hand? All you're doing is waving air around. And so this is not communicating. Communicating takes two people to transmit the information, one person to share it and one person to receive it. So keep that in mind.
Yes.
So let's talk about listen. Listen is different than communicate. It simply means to give attention to someone. So listening may look like this, or this, or this, or this, or this. You can look at someone with eye contact and listen or give the appearance of listening. And then here's another visual of someone holding a clipboard in an office, giving the appearance of communicating perhaps or listening. But I'm going to tell you a story about my experience with this because listening is not communication. So there was this manager that I worked for in an organization, and I had been part of it for about 7 years. And I was running things, more of the logistics and the operations. My manager was over lots of different groups. And so our group was one of many for him, and he didn't know the dynamics that were going on. And things had gone really bad that last year I was involved. And I had been so committed that I saw things going south. So I got up my courage. I made an appointment to meet with him to share the three things that I felt like were really damaging in the culture of the organization. He invited me in. He sat down like this woman in the picture with a clipboard, and he took notes looking at his clipboard while I shared the three things that I was concerned about. And then when I was finished, he looked up and he said, "Thank you for your time today." And he got up and he walked me to the door. He did not do active listening. He did not
How did you
communicate.
feel about that whole
Yeah.
exchange of information?
Oh, and then I quit because I had done the best I could and I could tell that he would not address things and nothing would change. And what's interesting is I left that group and they continued to decline. And the person that I was communicating to him about that was causing the breakdown of the culture, ended up being fired a year later. And
Mm.
other people by that time had quit. And now the group is completely closed. And so if he had communicated with me the exchange of information and addressed some of the issues that were happening, I may still be there. That organization probably still exists. But he
Yes.
he did not actively listen. And that's what we're going to talk about today. Simply looking at someone and receiving it is not active listening. So what do I mean by active listening? It's showing interest, being involved in the conversation, giving your full attention, and also showing that you're giving your full attention, truly understanding the message that's been given to you, and demonstrating to the person sharing or transmitting the message that you understand it. So, active listening goes well beyond simply listening, which is a one-way exchange, like the one hand clapping. I'm just listening. It doesn't mean I understood or that I communicated with you to understand. And so that's what we're talking about today, active listening. So what is not active listening? Here, here's some excuses I've heard as I've taught this seminar out to groups and trained groups of managers. So I've heard people say, people just need to do their job. We don't have time, and that's going to come up in here too. Like this active listening, like just do the work, and this is the way I am. Like this is how I listen. I wonder if that manager I had that I left, that one organization, I'm thinking that would have been this last phrase would have been what he'd said. Well, that's just the way I am because he had been a leader in corporate for 20 years, in the organization I was in for well over 10 years. So he probably was like, this is just the way I am. People can deal with it. People are too sensitive. That blocks active listening. I've got
Hmm.
one more here, Sal, and then I want to know if you've worked for any people that communicate this. What about this one? We are
Oh,
way
yeah.
too busy to do active listening around here, to sit down and talk this through. Like we've got stuff to do. We're too busy to do anything different. So have you
Yeah.
encountered any of these that block
All of
active
them.
listening?
All
Yeah.
of them. Yeah. And it's funny you mentioned this because sometimes you have to slow down to go fast,
Hmm.
right? And in the rush to go fast and fast and fast, you are rubbing people the wrong way. You're not taking the time to really connect with people and communicate and make sure that they're understood. And that causes irreparable damage, as you've seen,
Hmm.
right?
Yes.
So take the time and really be empathetic and connect with people, right? Maya Angelou said it very well. People
Yep.
will
And
forget
I'll,
what you say to
yeah.
them and what you do to them, but they'll never forget how you made them feel, right?
Right. And that touches on the core concept that communication is connection. And I think a lot of people dismiss that or don't think about it. But when we actively listen, when it's two-way communication for understanding, that is connection. And we do need connection to have successful teams in the workplace. Because without communication that's connecting, then relationships break down. And we're going to talk about that. What is the cost of not doing the active listening? If you have any of these excuses that you've thought or that you've voiced, then I want to just ask you to consider what the cost of that approach is for your team or even in your personal life. Because there's some of these that are said between partners in marriage, between parents and kids, people and their parents. Like, this is just the way I am. I don't need to communicate any differently. I'm this many years old. It's worked fine for me so far. But there is such missed opportunity in connection and building trust and communication when people just dismiss this and are too busy. So let's talk about some of those costs. What are the results of not doing anything different, not listening to understand, and the result or the cost of not being willing to slow down for active listening? So I'm going to list some of these and then see if you have any stories for me, Sal. So miscommunication, higher tension on teams. Oh my gosh, have you ever been in a meeting where communication was not happening? People were either talking at someone or not talking at all, so the tension raised.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah. Mistakes.
absolutely.
Mistakes, if communication is not clear, then mistakes are made, and you think that you're moving quickly, but when there's a mistake, what does that do? Slows everybody down while we fix the mistake. And then the damaged relationships. I'm going to
Yeah,
reveal these other four and then hear from you some of your experiences. So, wasted time if you're not listening to understand, low trust on your teams. That's why the team communication breaks down. Silos in an organization where there's multiple teams that would be more successful in collaborating. But if communication is not handled well and the active listening skills are not put into place, then people just like, well, I'm just not going to communicate. I'm just going to do my job here. And then there's silos built and work is duplicated or things are missed, and that leads to less successful outcomes. And then,
yeah,
like in my example, people just quit. What
yeah,
has shown up for you on teams you've been on, Sal, that haven't had
yeah.
active listening?
I want to mention something here which is very relevant in a Zoom setting or a Teams meeting, in a virtual call like what we are doing today. What about the situation where people are not on camera, right?
Hmm. Yep,
That's a problem, right? Because otherwise, how do you even know that the person is listening? And I've been in situations, in a sales situation, where the customer is on camera and nobody
oh,
from the provider is getting on camera, and that's a real problem, right? Because
yes, yes,
if you're not seeing the person and you're not really, it's difficult to not be listening if you're making eye contact, right? But
exactly.
if you intentionally are not even on camera and you're doing whatever else you're doing, there's no way of knowing whether you're even paying attention.
Yes.
So what are
And
your thoughts about that, Dory?
mhm. It's a very good point. If you are able to have a camera and to have a camera on, by all means, choose that. That's going to foster the connection that will serve you well, that will build trust, that will lead to communication for understanding instead of people making assumptions. And when I sat there with that manager of mine with the clipboard, I truly felt like he was sitting there making his grocery list. Like he made no indication that he heard or understood anything that I said. So I didn't know. When we are in a Zoom call like this, or just on camera, could be a Teams call or another type of meeting, and your camera is off, automatically the assumption is that person's not engaged.
Exactly.
That person is multitasking. They're checking their email or they're eating their lunch or they're, who knows what, playing a game. We've no idea. And here's another one too. I'm in a lot of Zoom meetings and people will be on Zoom in a meeting and then they'll be turned and doing this at their other screen.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
And that is not active listening. That's actually
absolutely.
devaluing, dismissing the people that are contributing or speaking. And so our presence is important and humans want the connection. And so when we're working together as often as we can to have our cameras on, be looking right at the camera for most of the exchange will make a big difference in the connections that you make. Especially if you're new to a team or you're in a role that is one where you have the potential to move up, The more engaged you are in meetings, the more that looks better for you as being a contributor to the team. So, yes, cameras on, I think they're important. You can't always have that. So, if you can't have the camera on, do your best to communicate in chat. Do your best to come on the microphone and make sure you do extra effort to contribute.
You
And
know,
so you
in
see
an
this the last one on this list is that people quit, and that's
yeah,
bad, right?
very bad. Yeah,
Turnover costs money. Turnover means the people that are left have to do more work until someone is in that role and trained. So it just disrupts lots of things and bogs down progress. But here's what's worse. Worse than people quitting is the people that stay. Because if there's a team that doesn't have active listening skills and these how to connect communication skills in play, your good people will leave. And who are you left with?
exactly.
A majority of people that do not actively listen, that devalue and disrespect in some ways, and bog down and silo and low trust. It just makes for a miserable work culture. And so I really think that's the worst thing if people don't quit. So now
Yeah.
you're probably wondering, what are we going to do about it? How do we do active listening to avoid all those things? Well, I've got two things first before we talk about the skill. The first one is the concept that no one is a mind reader. No one is a mind reader. So that manager that I met with that sat with the clipboard, he probably thinks we had a just fine meeting, that he gave me attention and that I was able to share what I needed to share. Did he think that I could read his mind, that he understood what I was saying? I don't know. I don't know. And I'm not a mind reader, so I'm guessing he doesn't care. He doesn't care what I have to say. So I left that office and quit. So no one is a mind reader. So what we want to do is in active listening skills, make sure that we're communicating and understanding one another and not trying to mind read. And the second concept before we get to the skills is think of it as needing to signal. Just like if your car's going down the highway lane and you want to move from one lane to another, no one is a mind reader. So we turn on our signal to let the person know, hey, we're moving into this lane or moving out of this lane. And it helps traffic flow better. It helps life go better. So I want you to think about active listening. How can you signal that you've communicated for understanding? So that's what we're going to talk about, signaling. I want you to think about it like you're a car that needs to signal. All right, one more caution. Here's what you don't do when you're just picture you've got a team member, you've got an issue, they come into your office to talk about what's not working in the last meeting that you have, and they come and they're sharing what their struggle is. Here's what you don't do. Don't listen to the beginning of what they're struggling with and start thinking about your response right away. Because what happens if you're thinking about how you're going to respond?
You're not paying attention to what they're saying,
You're not paying
right?
attention to what they're saying.
Yeah.
And remember, you're not a mind reader. So they maybe said one or two sentences, and your mind starts to think about what you want to say. You've just assumed that you completely understand everything that they're going to present to you. No, no, you're not a mind reader. Hear them out.
Yeah.
This is tied to wanting to rush the conversation. So this is an advanced skill is don't think about your response right away. Give this conversation time. That is how you're going to have an active listening conversation that is communicating both ways. So don't think about your response right away. And this one, you can start practicing this today. After you watching this and you leave and you go have your very next conversation, pay attention to yourself when you're in a when you're talking to somebody and they're talking to you. Are you truly tracking? Are you watching their eyes? Are you watching their mouth speak? Or is your mind absorbed in thinking about what you want to say next? So this is an important skill. If you're constantly absorbed in what your response is going to be, because you want to hurry the conversation and go on to something else, or because you want to impress them with what you have to say, or because you may just naturally be a talker. So then this is something you will want to practice with intentionality, and it'll make a difference in your relationships. All right, so how do you signal? Three things we're going to cover today: body language. Sal, you already touched on eye contact. That'll be part of that one. We're going to talk about ask for more and what I mean by that. And the third thing, summarize. So these are the three core steps for signaling active listening: body language, ask for more, and summarize. So let's talk about body language first. Eye contact is a big one. But first, let's think about distraction. There is research that if you are holding a phone, not even looking at it, but you're talking to someone and you're holding a phone, that there is less comprehension between what is being communicated between the two people by 30%. Just the presence of a phone in someone's hand. Isn't that interesting? So if you can, put the phone down. What's another distraction at work and in meetings? Sal, I'm wondering if you can think of this. I'm gonna point to, I don't have one on because I don't wear
Well,
one.
your computer or your watch or yeah,
Smartwatch. Now
yeah.
that's not in every workplace or all, not it's not a trend all around the world in every culture. But in many meetings I go to, people are wearing smartwatches. And yes, we're in a meeting and we could be talking about something really great or really important and people are engaged. And then all of a sudden, there's no noise usually, but people just start looking because they have a smartwatch on that has notifications. That distraction, that small look, ugh, it communicates a lot in that microsecond about how you are not engaged in the conversation and you're not really listening for understanding. So if you have to wear a smartwatch, I recommend you don't wear it if the meeting is important and if the team is of value, take it off, but make sure that it isn't distracting you such that you have to look at it. And by the way, if your phone is ruling your life like that, your stress level is probably too high. That's why I don't wear one of those. As I think it activates our body so regularly throughout the day when we wear one of those that it does make life harder to manage in general. Do you have any thoughts on those Apple Watches, Sal?
Yeah, I'm not a big fan of them
Mhm.
because, people you get pinged and it vibrates and then you're gonna look at it and I mean,
Mhm.
and I've seen all kinds of things, right? When you're having an important conversation and suddenly the other person's phone rings,
Mhm.
right?
Yep.
Uh, Turn your phone off if you're going into an
Mhm.
important meeting,
Turn it off.
right?
Yes. So guard
Because,
against distraction. Yes. Hmm.
right?
All right, let's do the next one. Posture. Okay, body language. There's a lot of ways to think about body language regarding listening. So that manager that had the clipboard in the image that I put in the slide deck, she was looking down at her clipboard. Now, my manager that I described in the story, he was very flatly looking up at me, not just looking at the clipboard. But if you're taking notes furiously without looking up, that does communicate a little like less connection. That can be
Absolutely.
overcome, but just be mindful of that. Also, think about posture as far as like communicating. Um, I'm trying to think of like an example. When I worked in a customer service job and I was at my desk sitting down, and my manager at that time wanted to come give me feedback, would stand right over me. And so that made me less likely to share it just made it less psychologically safe. If you're going to go and talk to someone, both stand or both sit is what I recommend. If it's going to be a conversation that really needs to happen for, there could be tension rising in the conversation, making even like it's almost like nobody's one up over the other. Even though someone might be someone's boss, if you think about body language and matching the person that you're talking to, most likely there'll be better communication for understanding. Now, not always, but it's something to consider posture wise. Also, in meetings, uh, have you, Sal, ever had anybody sit in a meeting and they're like leaning, they're leaning back, they're swiveling?
Yeah, you won't believe, Dory. I have had a situation for a very large software company. I won't name any names. And this guy, he would sit leaning back, and his feet and his shoes would be on the table.
No.
Okay. A- And and they're literally facing me because
No,
I'm on the other
no.
side of the table. All right. And he's shaking, moving his feet like that, like wiper
Mm,
blades, while he's talking to me. How
no.
terrible is that?
In some countries, that is extremely disrespectful to show the bottom of your shoes in any way. To do that on the desk? Uh-uh. No,
Right?
no. And so any kind of form of like leaning back and wiggling and like you're showing what you're communicating non-verbally is this doesn't matter to me. I don't want to be here. I don't want to listen to you. I might look at you, but it's a passive aggressive mood sometimes. Um,
Yeah.
and so you want to just sit in a neutral posture. You want to sit upright. You can lean back in your chair, of course, but giving full attention is what we're talking about. So think about your posture. Eye contact, we talked a little bit about that one. On a Zoom call, and like in this recording, I have a special camera that drops down into my screen. There are a couple different vendors that sell them or companies that sell them. This one happens to be Center Cam. I don't own any part of that company. I don't get any kickback from them, but I like it because it drops down into the monitor onto the screen and it's really small. I can't show you, but it's like this small. There's other ones where it's like a clear drop down that you can rest your camera on rather than having it way up high or way down below. So if you do a lot of meetings, you're a remote worker and your meetings are virtual, you will have stronger connection and better communication if you look at the camera while you're looking at the person on the virtual. And so eye contact in
Absolutely.
person as well. Now, I know some people struggle greatly with eye contact and don't force it, but just work on it. And if you struggle to look right at people's eyes, you can look at their nose, the bridge of their nose, or look at their mouth and just try to go higher every once in a while. And you can look away. You don't want to glare at people, that's also uncomfortable. But just know that comfortable, organic, natural eye contact regularly is part of active listening and it's part of signaling that you're engaged in listening to understand. And then facial expression. Some people naturally have a very grumpy listening face. And hopefully, if you are one of those people, you know that about yourself. And if not, ask the people that are in your life what type of listening face you have. And that one of those earlier slides where I showed people's listening faces, they all, for the most part, had a neutral listening face with eye contact. But some people, and like this like furrowed brow, they're listening. I think of the engineers in my life. That's a little stereotypical, but often engineers, and it's because they concentrate and because their tendency is to analyze, and they will have a listening face that looks very negative. So if you are not aware of what type of listening face you have, I highly encourage you to get feedback from people, to have a mirror up. You could have a mirror beside you while you're having meetings and check in. Or if a meeting is recorded and it's a group gallery meeting recorded, get the recording and watch it. You don't have to listen to it, but watch your face. What does your face look like in a recorded meeting? That might show you some clues about what your listening face looks like. So you want to try to have relaxed. You don't want a goofy smile, no fake smile, but just relax, particularly your mouth area when you're listening. When your mouth area is relaxed, your eyes will soften rather than being focused and tight, which means, I'm analyzing, maybe I'm criticizing. But a relaxed mouth and jaw will open and soften your eyes. And that will communicate nonverbally that I am open, I am engaged, I am listening. Any thoughts on body language before I move on to number two?
When I go into a client meeting, I intentionally sit on the same side as the customer
Mm,
instead of on the opposing side. And just that one small thing makes a big difference because it communicates that I'm on their side and I'm not on the opposing team, I'm on their team. Makes a big difference.
oh, that's so good. And think about that also in an office setting. If you're a manager and you have your desk and the doors maybe over there and you have a chair on the other side of your desk, think about having a second chair over there. Someone comes in for a meeting, you move and sit beside them instead of across the big desk. That makes
Yeah.
a lot of sense to me. So being
Mm-hmm.
aware of those can change the dynamic of your conversations. And small changes like that build up over time. And then you'll find people open up to you more if you're the manager, you're the leader, and your culture is going to shift for the better. So that's a good example. All right.
Yeah.
Oh, I forgot the movement part. I thought I was done with this one. You want to nod a little bit. Now, if you are a chronic bobblehead nodder, that could be distracting. And
Yes.
there are a few of those in my life, but an occasional nod, especially if someone says something with a little more emphasis, then that may be a good time to nod because you're kind of matching their energy that's going up. Or if someone is starting to hesitate and slow down and you want to encourage them to keep going, like I am listening, and remind them. So that might be maybe that lean forward you can see me do. I tend to combine that with my nod, a little bit of a lean forward, which is a nonverbal invitation, keep going. So
Mm.
movement. Also, another one on virtual is you don't want to be a statue. There are times when people freeze so much, I truly think like they're frozen in the connection. And then they'll blink or they'll move a tiny bit. So you want to move a little bit virtually in the frame, as then people know you're a real person and you're really there, and so that can just especially if it's a small meeting. If it's a large meeting, people probably aren't going to notice. But if it's two of you talking or it's just a small group, do a little bit of movement while you're on the virtual camera. And when you're in person, like Sal, you were just saying, you sit with people, many times communication is more natural if we mirror them. So if they're sitting up like this at the table, leaning forward a little bit, if you match them or they lean back a little bit, not in a disengaged way, then maybe you relax a little. Uh, Um, Now, we don't want to copy someone in an awkward way, but a little bit of mirroring can also just bring more openness feel to a conversation. Okay, let's get into number two. Ask for more. This one is a skill that might take practice for a lot of people, especially those that are analyzing what's being said. So a person comes and gives you information. They are telling you about their day, or they're telling you about something they just attended, or they're telling you about a problem that they're having with the project. and you listen to the information and you've been present and you're listening, so you don't have a response yet. And so, what do you say then? I don't have a response because I was fully listening. Here's a skill I would like you to try. Ask for more. So I'm going to tell you a story about where this plays into my life on a regular basis. It's with my mother-in-law. She's a very nice person. She's very polite, but she does not do this skill. And I've been married for over 30 years. So I've had multiple conversations, hundreds of conversations with her over the years. We see each other a few times every year. She will come and sit beside me and will ask an initial question about, so what's been going on lately? And I tell her, I'm excited. I tell her all the things that are going on in my life, and she watches with her listening face with no signaling. And then I'll finish talking and I'm excited about it. And then here's what she will often do. So what should we have for dinner tonight? I will have just said something I'm really excited about. She asked me what I'm doing in my life. I tell her, and she doesn't do any follow-up. So this ask for more, and it can go if it's someone coming to you with a problem too, and you don't know how to solve it yet. You're not prepared to go into solution mode. You still need to think about it, but ask for something more. So in my mother-in-law example, she could say, "Oh, that's interesting. What did you like about your visit to Dallas, Texas?" That's all. Just ask, find one small thing in what was shared and ask for more. Or if a problem has been presented to you, ask for more detail. And I'm going to have some scripts around that at the end. Just pull one thing out and ask. Do this with your kids or with your partner, and this will make a difference in your conversations and the level of connection that they feel if this doesn't come naturally to you. So, Sal, as I shared my mother-in-law story, did you have any thoughts that came up for you around conversations asking for more information?
Yeah, yeah. I've been in many situations where you haven't even completed what you're saying, and the person is already gone to the next thing,
Yeah,
right? If
yeah.
you're asking me, hey, how are you feeling? At least give me the respect to tell you how I'm feeling before you go on to something else.
Right, because if there's no ask for more, there's no response back, then that is one-sided. That is not communication.
Exactly.
And that is not connection. So here's some things. Here's some things you can say. Tell me more about, you pull one thing out of it and say, well, tell me more about the conversation that you had. Tell me more about what you found when you were out doing that you just told me about. Tell me more about why you're feeling stuck. So tuck that away. Tell me more about. Or you could say, what do you mean by? What do you mean by? And pull out a word or a part of what they just shared. And that's a really great one with kids because sometimes kids need practice for speaking with more clarity. So they come to you with a problem or something, they're assuming that you understand everything they're saying and you can respond with, "Well, what do you mean by?" And say it openly, not critical. What do you mean by? I'm not challenging you. What do you mean by? I'm curious. And another one is, well, can you give me an example? I hear you're angry about. I hear you're excited about. Can you give me an example? I hear that you're stuck with this. Can you give me an example of how that showed up for you? Like someone comes and they're complaining, my computer keeps crashing. I am so frustrated. It just doesn't work for me. And then you're like, well, give me an example of what you're talking about. In what way is it crashing? What does that mean? Oh, and that's all I had on those. Is there one of those that you tend to use more than the others, Sal?
Yeah, yeah. I tend to use, can you be a little more specific?
Oh, that's a good way. I should have put that on this slide. Yes. Can
Yeah.
you be a little more specific? That's another way of saying, can you, what do you mean by that?
Yeah.
Give me some more details. Yeah.
Yeah, because many times if you're providing feedback and it's not positive feedback, and you're telling the person, well, you're not very detail oriented. Well, can you give me a specific situation where you saw that I wasn't, and what would you want me to have done differently?
Yes.
Right? Because just saying something as high level, or, I want you to be more curious. Can you tell me what does that look like? Right?
Yes. That's really good. Ask for more information. Yes.
Yeah.
That's so good. All right, so that was number two. So we covered body language and then ask for more. And then the last skill for active listening is summarize.
Mm-hmm.
Another advanced skill, and this is going to help you not do the let me think about what I'm going to say, because you're going to track what they're saying so you'll be able to summarize. Here's some phrases for summarizing. It sounds like you're very frustrated. It sounds like you're excited about what's going on this next month. It sounds like, and fill in the blank. That that's pretty easy. You're just listening. You don't even have to have captured all the details of what they say. You're just commenting on the energy, if you will, or maybe a feeling word, or just what you've experienced as you've listened to them. So that's an easy way to signal that you're listening. And then you can soften it if you're not quite sure. You're like, well, I could be wrong, but it sounds like you're very frustrated. Another way to summarize is what I heard is, and that's really good if it is a feedback conversation and you really want to drill down and make sure that you understood it properly or understood what they're saying. What I hear you say is, or what I heard is, and then you say, did I get that right? That last one on here. What I hear you saying is you and Sally Joe, coworker, are struggling to work together and collaborate. Did I get that right? Yes. And then I might go back and do ask for more. Give me some specific examples of where things broke down for the two of you. So you could do a summary statement and then go back to the ask for more to do the communication for connecting. And then the main thing, you can just try to pull out the main thing. That's a good one. I like that. If somebody's very wordy and I did have trouble tracking them, I'll just, I'll just, my summary statement is what I hear is that the main thing that you're concerned about is da 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 da. And then I'll do this last one. Did I get that right? And so these are summary statements just to check in and make sure that what I heard you communicating is that it was received. So, do you have any favorites on this list or another one to add?
Yeah, I typically tend to say that something like this. I want to make sure that I am understanding you correctly. What I heard you say is blah, blah, blah. Is that right? Did I miss something?
I
And
love
then you're
that
giving
because
them
you're
the
almost you're
opportunity.
telling them why. I want to make sure that I understand. That is so meaningful for people to hear.
Yeah.
It's a good
But
one.
these are really good. These are really good things, right?
When you think about your managers in the past, um, did you feel like they did a good job of these three skills, the body language, the ask for more, or summarize? If you're thinking of like one specific manager that either did this really well or neglected to do it.
Yeah, some of them did it very well. Some of them were terrible at it,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
Uh, I mean, it's almost like in certain cases, you walk into the meeting and you right from the start know that it's not going to go well.
Hmm.
I had one guy who in a virtual setting, if he wasn't on camera, it's because he's going to be giving you some writing you up. He didn't feel comfortable doing that when he's in person or looking at you. So he would intentionally not be on camera and provide you with negative feedback. Uh, if it was not negative, uh, it was almost like if I were to see him, that meant that it's going to be okay, the meeting, right?
Mhm.
But that's like exactly what you said, Dory. That is not creating an environment of trust, and it's putting doubt and uncertainty and
Mhm.
unnecessary stress in the communication.
Yes. Yes, because that's what happens when you think people can mind read. When you think you can mind read, when you think they can mind read you, then there's this stress and tension and lack of trust and relationships break down. Yes, it is almost like an illness that permeates the culture of a team or a company.
Yeah,
Why these skills are so important to practice. And I think many managers don't get the training that they need to feel safe enough to practice this. It's almost like it needs to come down from the top. The top leaders, if they model these skills, then the leader, it trickles down in the organization. Now, what do you do if you're not at the top, right? And you don't want to quit. You like what the work that you do, you just have a manager or a team that doesn't do these skills. Well, that's when I would start modeling it. And then also, if someone, like, here's what I do with my mother-in-law now. I will say something that I feel like I offered to her, and then she changes the subject really quick, and then I will ask her a question because if I so, oh, let me be more specific. So if I share something exciting about a trip that I did or a place where I went, and then she doesn't do any kind of reflection back or summarizing back. And I felt like it was a one-handed conversation, which leaves me feeling bad about our relationship. I give her another chance by saying, "Have you taken any trips lately?" And then that gives her a chance to re-engage with me. So, thinking in a work setting, you share something about a problem that you're having, and your manager just changes the subject or does what my manager did back in that first example of, well, thank you for coming today, and get up and, to see me out the door. If I were to be in that situation today, I would look at him with a neutral face and I would say, well, I'm curious to know your thoughts about what I just shared.
right, right.
I would, if they don't have the skill to ask for more or to summarize back, I'm not going to fall into the trap if I can help it of mind reading. What did he think? I don't know. He doesn't care about me. He doesn't listen. He wrote his grocery list. That's me mind reading. Now that I know more, I know better, I do better, I will just ask people what they think. I said, I just shared a lot with you and you haven't really had a response. I'm curious, what are you thinking right now? And so
Exactly.
that's what you can do. I call that managing up. If you have a manager that doesn't do this, you can help them out a little bit if it fits in the dynamic. So, oh, there was one more I had for this. Is there anything I missed? And you touched on that, Sal. Did I get that right? Is there anything I missed? And so doing that final check-in. Now, imagine doing this with your teenagers. Yeah, it
Yeah,
changes the conversation. And if you've not done this in the dynamic with teenagers, if you're having a challenging relationship with them and you start doing it, they're going to be like, what? That's weird, right? But keep doing it. Keep trying it because this is what I use to transform the relationships with a couple of my kids when they became teenagers and communication broke down. So these are great personally as well as at work. So here's the three skills. How do you signal? You use body language, you ask for more, and you summarize. You have to prove it. You have to prove that you're actively listening. If you want to build trust, if you want to have all those good things about building a team that has healthy two-way communication, put these skills into practice. And I want
Yeah,
to
now I
finish.
want to
Oh,
mention something
uh-huh.
here, right? And this is important for our listeners and people who are watching this. Active listening doesn't necessarily mean that you have to agree with the person,
Mhm.
right? You can disagree, but yet do it in a way that is respectful without severing the relationship. So that's one point I want to make. And sometimes, if you can see that it is a very charged atmosphere, I've done this where if my manager is really agitated and is really like screaming at me, I would say I've said this that "Hey, it seems that you're very upset and you're very agitated. I'm not going to have this conversation right now. So
Mhm.
let's set up a follow-up time when you're a little more calm, and then we can talk more, right? Because
Oh, yes.
otherwise, when it's that charged in atmosphere, it's not going to go well. So those are two of my points that I wanted to just make.
I'm so glad you brought that up. Yes, if someone is really highly emotionally activated, or you could just feel it, you could feel the tension, that means that their brain is not fully present. And so trying to do the conversation then is not, it is almost guaranteed to not go well. So, yes, you want to take a break. You want to say, hey, I can feel like this is getting more and more tense and it's going to be let's pause for a minute, regroup our thoughts and come back together in an hour this afternoon, tomorrow morning after we've thought about it. So that is powerful and that's important. And those are emotional regulation skills. Use that at home too. Do a timeout, take a break, separate to different rooms and calm down and say, we're not ignoring this. We'll have another conversation when we're both calmer. And then,
Yeah.
then that other point that you made. So you talked about saying it when you're angry, and there was another, what was the second thing you just said? It was good.
Uh, the second thing was, yeah, you don't have to agree with the person.
Oh, right. That's so powerful. And here is where active listening skills help. You just gave them your full attention. You asked for more. You summarized back for understanding. And now they're more likely, they're more likely to listen to your side. So you do all of these active listening skills, and then you say, well, I have a different perspective I'd like to share with you. And there are people who are not as good listeners for me as I am for them, and they might start talking over me or they might interrupt me. But I just did a whole lot of good listening for you. So I stand up for myself and I say, hold on, let me finish my thoughts here. I listen to yours. I want to finish my
Hmm.
perspective. And so that's important to remember. Right. Active listening doesn't mean you agree. And nodding doesn't mean you agree either. You could do this too instead of nodding. Nodding means tell me more. And then you can say, I have a different perspective, or I see this circumstance differently than you do. I'd like to tell you my view. So that's powerful. Thank you for that, Sal. All right.
Absolutely.
So, Maya Angelou. Oh, I love this quote. People will forget what you said. People will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel. That manager that I quit on, that was more than 10 years ago. I remember that feeling of being devalued, that feeling of being so passionate about the organization and wanting it to not break down. And I remember that he didn't care. So keep this in mind. It's not really about the words that you say. It's how you're making them feel or creating the opening for them to feel like you're someone they can talk to, communicate with, connect with. And then another quote I like is Stephen Covey, seek first to understand and then be understood. So that's where the active listening comes in. Let me hold my response until I fully understand, and then I can take my turn to share. Now, it sounds like this is really time consuming, but it doesn't have to be. It might feel that way, especially at first if you're practicing these skills in a new way with more intention, but keep practicing them. And over time, it'll become just a natural part of your conversations and it won't feel like it's bogging you down or slowing you down. So practice them. Finally, I want to talk about, I've finished a lot of my sessions this way, Sal, I'm sure you've noticed. What is your higher goal? And that's what Maya Angelou's quote is about. What's your higher goal? What are your values, your goals as a leader? What type of leader are you? How do you want people to experience you as a leader? So think about that because the people on your team, the people you work with, you work for, it could be nonprofit, it could be in the corporate world, in your small business, even in your family, your friends. Everyone wants to be acknowledged and to be valued for their contribution. And one way that you can give that to people is by active listening. So I encourage you to be really intentional to try that. And that ends our session.
Awesome. This was so helpful, Dory, and this was a very, very important lesson. And I'm so glad that you did this. And it's a skill like anything else, right? You got to practice it. The more you do it, the better you'll get at it. And as you said, small incremental improvements done consistently will compound over a period of time and produce massive results, right?
Yes.
So thank you. Thank you for doing this.
Yes. So I'm excited because I'm passionate about communication because I believe these small shifts in the way we communicate can transform relationships over time. And maybe not in the workplace where you are now, but in your families in particular, your friendships with your parents. And then if you're ever in a level where you're managing people, you make a big difference in their life. Work is 40, 50, 60 hours a week sometimes. If
Oh,
you're
yeah.
leading people and you use these active listening skills, it will transform just their experience at work, which translates into their all of their lives. So I hope everyone will put
Absolutely.
it into practice.
Yeah, and we're going to put the slides there in the course description, and obviously you'll have the video and the audio as well. And please feel free to reach out if you have any questions. Coach at MaximizeU.life. And Dory, thank you so much. And I'm sure a lot of our folks are going to love this particular training. So I'm going to stop the recording
All right.
now.
Bye.
Yeah.